Have fun, Ralf.
Thank you. Okay, let's share. Here we go. So, a short introduction to myself. My name is Ralf Brennscheidt. I'm a modern Office 365 developer with the main focus on SharePoint Online and the SharePoint framework, and of course, Microsoft Teams. I'm working for Innofactor already. No, I think I go into third year now. As mentioned, main focus is Office 365, including also, of course, Microsoft Flow and the Graph API. And yeah, some social media links on top of that. Shortly, a small agenda. I'm not gonna present way too much PowerPoint presentations, but I would like to give a short introduction. What is the Microsoft Teams messaging extension? Then we shortly go over to the Yo generator for Teams. Later on, we will have then a look at the demo, which I prepared already. And if there is time, a little bit Q&A at the end. Okay. So shortly, an introduction to what is the Microsoft the Teams messaging extension. Perhaps most of you probably know the interface. However, you have here in the input box at the bottom those the formatting. Can send attachments. You have here the emojis. You have Giphy integration and some other features. Furthermore, you see you have the three dots here, and it's already highlighting that it says messaging extension. And that basically is already all what it is about. The messaging extension is functionality, for example, like here. You open a GIF and you have here an input box where you can search for something and it gives you a specific image what you're looking for. This is called a search-based message extension. And the alternative way is if you really use this three-dot menu here, you get other features. Some of them are pre-installed, but of course, in this case, as you see here already, there's the Teams FI demo, which I have already prepared. And this is basically an action-based message extension. The difference is that instead of like having a simple interface here where you can just search for something, it returns you something for whatever backend might be available, and you can post it then in the conversation, in the chat, or in the channel itself. The action-based is more of, how to say, a pure interaction with whatever backend you have implemented. To give a short, simple example about the action-based, it is, okay, this is not working right now. Here, you have here something which is the more actions, which is also highlighted here in the three-dot menu. For example, you would like to, I don't know, put something like as a reminder for yourself, and you get an interaction. As you see here, a dialog window is popping up, asking you something, you enter some information, you confirm it, and then data is being transmitted to whatever backend you have implemented utilizing the messaging extension. However, for the simpler purposes, today we focus a little bit on like the search-based message extension, and that's basically what I will now show and go forward. As mentioned, there is a generator for that, which simplifies basically the whole process how you usually develop applications. To shortly go back, the traditional way, or however it has been mainly distributed by Microsoft, how you do that is you go in the so-called App Studio. This is like a tool which Microsoft is providing on top of Teams to basically simplify for you the possibility to create applications and create, so to say, a skeleton for your application. The traditional way, of course, is here in the manifest editor, you create a new app and start basically through a form defining the properties and the details of whatever application you would like to create. And once this is basically saved, I'm not gonna at that right now, you have basically the opportunity to download a small package, which basically in the end contains just a manifest file and 2 images, which is usually the icon, what is being shown here. And for the installation, like in the overview, you have a little bigger icon here also. So as you see here, has a new app being created, and basically then you can download this package, and then you have basically those 3 files, and those are then being extended to with your functionality and features, whatever you would like to have. So to now go shortly to the generator, which has been created by the community, especially by Victor Willen, and he is actually quite active. So you can be sure that it will not be outdated quite soonish. However, so to install the generator, you use the node package management, and it is called generator-teams. Of course, you usually install it globally. I'm not going to install it right now because I have it already installed, but that basically is the way how you would install the generator, which is basically scaffolding or creating a skeleton for you with like a simplified process. To just demonstrate that, you call it with yo teams. This is basically calling the generator, and it starts similar as you might perhaps know it from the Microsoft SharePoint framework generator. No, there you go. Okay, so basically it comes up with a couple of questions asking you what is the name of your solution. For our case, we can go with like this. I name it demo1. Then it asking you like where to save it, use the current folder, create a subfolder. A title for your application, Teams FI Demo 1, who's the company, and then you get asked about which version of the manifest you would utilize. To go a little bit on the background, this is how to say the whole definition for the Microsoft Teams development manifest. Meaning, depending on what kind of like of features you would like to utilize in your application, you can base the whole thing on different schemas with different functionality and features. However, I would suggest usually to go with the latest, or of course, if you would like to work on how to say features which are in alpha or beta status and not yet deployed to Microsoft Teams, then you go with the dev preview. In our case, we just go with the dev preview, and then it is asking here the Microsoft Partner ID. You usually can leave that blank. And then comes basically the similar part as we have seen here in the manifest already in the editor. It's starting to asking you details about what kind of features you would like to have. Do you want to have a tab, or do you want to have a bot integrated, a connector, or a message extension? In this case here, like with the space, you simply can select what feature you would like to have. In this case, now we want to have a messaging extension. Then it is asking you where you will host this solution. I will later in a moment come back to that related to Azure and how you quite easily can host that in the cloud platform from Microsoft. However, in this case right now, of course, you can also host it somewhere else. You're not forced to host it in Azure, but then it makes things a little bit more difficult. Let's keep it just as it is. Then it asks you if you would like to have a test framework, meaning you can have unit tests for the solution. In our case, we skip that. We don't need telemetrics for application insights. Then we create the whole thing in a new bot. And here comes the question if you would like to have a search-based or an action-based solution. Yes, we can keep it like this. Teams FI1. Describe your message extension. We can skip that, and then it already starts to basically create for you already a predefined solution with all the source code which might be necessary for you to develop the solution. This will take now a little moment. And then I will start over and show a little bit of source code. Here we go. So the project has now been created. Demo 1. There we go. We start the code editor. And as you see, the whole project has basically been created already for you. And if we have a look into the source code, we can see that here is the Teams FI Demo 1 bot, and here, as we have selected, is the Demo 1 messaging extension. If we have a look in the source code, it has already basically pre-created for you already some functionality over there. In this case, it is a simple, adaptive card. Unfortunately, I cannot right now. I think it would explode the time schedule to explain the adaptive card. But I would highly recommend to do some research on it. It seems to be very heavily developed forward and extended. It is basically, what you perhaps have seen already in Teams sometimes when you have something like this here, might be an adaptive card, and also in the conversations, something like this here, that predefined HTML documents are being presented to you in a very consistent and Microsoft branded way. However, the card has been here predefined for you already to have everything based on. There's also a preview card being created, and a little bit further down, you see here that once an initial run starts, meaning that the first moment a user is opening your message extension, basically this here is being hit, and it right away returns to you a result with an attachment, and there it's then presenting the card and the preview. If the user then has typed something in, it goes in the else, because then it's not an initial run anymore, and it basically here in the example, it shows you pretty much the same. And furthermore, here's a simple on button click. The way how you can now customize that, I will now switch to the pre-created demo to just show you with how little changes you basically can already modify and adapt this to your own implementations. So let me shortly close that and open the other project. It pretty much looks the same, except that I moved those adaptive card and the preview into a separate function to keep it a little bit more dynamic. But as you see here, the code, which is on the moment when you receive that in the query, is a little, is quite small. It's pretty much the same as it is in the example, like when the query is the initial run, return something. In this case, I just have returned a simple message instead of the preview card and the pre-created preview and adaptive card. And once it is not an initial run, I'm doing here my backend functionality. For example, that I retrieve something from any API which is available. In the case of the out of the box, for example, here we have the, I suppose, Giphy API. So basically, the moment the user types something in here, the API is being called to Giphy and is returning a specific result. In this case, I don't know, funny, as you see, it probably queries now the Giphy API and returns any kind of pictures which are funny related to whatever you have typed in. And in this case, right now, how I adapted it shortly is I used the Q&A maker, which is like for question answers, which is part of the Microsoft Cognitive Services. So to shortly have a look in that, I have created a knowledge base here, which has some questions and some answers, and I'm basically querying those now with a very, very simple API call. I can shortly show that. So get answer from Q&A bot. So it's basically I prepare a post request to the API, which basically it just has a specific address. I'm posting the data, which is basically just the question, what I would like to ask, sending this to the query and retrieving the data. And at the end, I'm returning the data. So whatever the API is returning, I basically wrap this answer then into this adaptive card. As you see here, get preview and get card is basically the same thing. And what I'm just passing in is the whatever came back as an answer and what the user has been asked for. And I'm putting that here in the text. So I just changed the out of the box what has been created to just include whatever the user has been asked. And the rest is pretty much out of the box right away, the same what the generator has already been created. So basically it asks from the Q&A bot what has been asked, returns the answer, dynamically creates the card with the reply from the API and creates the preview and returns the card what has been pre-generated. So to shortly show what actually happens here, let me shortly build that. For demo purposes and to make it a little bit, how to say, faster, I'm hosting this solution locally and have not deployed it yet to Microsoft Azure. It is basically just for demo purposes. Going to start the solution. Here we go. And attaching the debugger so that we can have a look actually what happens. Go. And if we go here in the conversation, as I said before, it is being implemented here as a message extension. And this is the message, what I have said, like in the beginning, what's being returned. So in an initial run, it's like, please enter a search term. We shortly have a look back here. What was it at the beginning? The message, basically, what is being returned, please enter a search term. This is the message for the initial run. So the first time when the user opens the message extension. And now basically any kind of question or whatever we're asking will now be sent to the knowledge database or the Q&A maker API. In this case, for example, some phone. So it makes now the call to the Q&A, and here's like FAQ answer for the question phone, and then you have here the answer. Once you click this, it will be an adaptive card and being added into the message queue. And now you basically just push the send button and send it to the users or the group or channel or something like that. The cool thing here is that you can even, provide even more details or more interaction or more functionality with a button which has been here implemented. To do that, or how it looks like, is basically here in the card which has been created with the FAQ answer and question. And you have here basically a very simple JSON-based definition of what kind of actions you would like to have. In this case, it is a submit button, as you see, with more details, and those details can cause a specific action, and in this case, an ID. So if the user would now basically click this one, we would even then get a call back to our bot or API that the button has been clicked. The functionality for that is also predefined already in here. On card button clicked. So if I would now put the breakpoint here in the debugger, and once we would click now this message, there we go. And here it hits basically the action button and defines, okay, now the button has been clicked, and whatever information has been predefined, as you see here, more details into ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as we have it defined in here, can also be transmitted. So through this, basically, you have the opportunity to even further interact with the user about specific details you have been returned from the adaptive card. Of course, this opens quite a lot of opportunities, functionalities, and features. And I think it is a very, very simple way for you to already get the start how to develop further message extensions for the Teams itself. The original way, of course, is that Microsoft says go with the so-called bot framework, similar to the SharePoint Online framework, which more or less requires you basically to create the bot from scratch, meaning that you have to do all the coding, all the integrations, and whatever functionality you would like to use. You might remember in the beginning there was either way you want to have a tab, or you want to have a full bot, or if you want to have a web hookup or a connector, or in our case here, a message extension, that you have to create the whole code by yourself accordingly to like the bot framework definition. This generator basically simplifies the whole process and pre-creates for you already whatever you need, and gives you a quite fast head start to right away implement whatever solution you would like to do, with less hassle of creating the whole skeleton around it to having this implemented for your environment. The good thing here is shortly to mention about the deployment and hosting of this solution. As I said, with the Azure framework, you have it quite easy, the Azure environment, to create a bot over here. What I would highly recommend is really to use the Azure, because it makes it much easier. So you basically create a new resource, type in here bot, you have here a web app bot, and right away creates for you the environment where you can basically host the bot. This is also something then once you have created a bot, I'm now going shortly to the one which I used for this solution right now. It was, where is it? Teams FI demo there. The information while the generator was running, let's go shortly back. In the beginning was something like, I need the Microsoft App ID for the bot used by the message extension. In our case, we just hit return, but that is basically something what you then can retrieve from the bot information itself. Once you have created those in the Azure, you basically just go here to the settings and scroll down, and here you can see already the Microsoft App ID, which has been automatically created for you. This is basically something what you then need for the configuration once you have finished your development and would like to deploy the final solution. There is, of course, a lot of explanation inside of the generated solution itself, which is like the README and the README for your bot, whatever you have been created. which explains already quite nicely what you have to do to get your project up and running, or including the deployment to Microsoft Azure. As you see here, deploying to Azure using basically the Git method. And here you have a step-by-step instruction how you can use the continuous deployment to your bot using basically the solution itself. It's just a couple of commands, and I think they are very easy to follow up here and work quite nicely. Yes, I think to shorten things a little bit, 6 minutes are left. I leave it now at this point. I hope it was not too short. Are there any questions?
Anybody? Feel free to ask questions either in the chat or open your mic.
This is Jari Kota speaking. What kind of business application you have created with adaptive cards and this kind of extensions? You don't have to expose your business secrets, but I'm interested to know what kind of real life solutions you have done.
One of the solutions is really this, what I have showed in the beginning, the Remind Me, which is basically something which would send the reminder for yourself to the currently total fancy and super popular to-do list, where you, for example, could utilize the Graph API to send information to a specific user as a reminder, basically as a to-do item or something on the calendar and things like that. So you're basically kind of freely set up whatever you would like to implement, but that's definitely a real life solution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for the interesting presentation, Ralf. Of course, if any of you have other questions or you want to go back to the Pauli's presentation, ask questions about that, feel free. Or in case you don't have anything else, we can always continue Q&A in the chat later on.
Yes, I know it was probably quite a lot. It was a lot of coding. It was a lot, how to say, I had to compact it somehow. There is much more to it than just what I have shown shortly, but if there are any questions afterwards or you need some help, assistance, please feel free to contact me.
Ralf, was it so that the messaging extensions is still on dev preview, so you need to actually activate the dev preview mode on your Teams?
Not everything. The search-based is not. This should already work, but the how to say, the action-based, and even just recently, I think in the last 2-3 days, in dev preview came already the task-based. So it basically would react on specific tasks the user is executing and hooking in there. But that's really early stage, and therefore makes no sense yet to mention.
Maybe after summer we know more.
Yeah, probably more to the.
Yeah, during the summer, Teams is going to get 1 or 2 other new features as well. So it's kind of most likely the dev side. It's going to get a lot of new applications and features during the summer as well. All right, but thank you. I will stop the recording here. Thank you for joining in, and